Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you're with us. If you're joining us on television here in Santa Barbara, California, we welcome you. And we're seeing folks from, I think, about 106 countries join us at goodlifetelevision.org. And that's just wonderful to see. We welcome you wherever you are. We're talking about the good stuff. We're dwelling on the good stuff. We get to choose what we dwell on. And things like kindness and honor and overcoming and goodness is what we're talking about here at Good Life Television. So goodlifetelevision.org is where you can find all these magnificent people, overcomers. That's not always pretty. We don't avoid suffering. We don't avoid topics that are tough, but we get to choose what we dwell on. And so we're so grateful you joined us at goodlifetelevision.org. And many of you now are finding us at our podcast, which is Good Life Conversations. And of course, you can follow us on the social media platforms, and we just welcome you. And I couldn't be more excited, actually. I'm telling you the truth. I couldn't be more excited about this interview today. Dr. Pastor Dick Foth is with me. Welcome, Dick.
Thank you, Dean. Wonderful to be here with you.
So Dick Foth has been a pastor. He planted a church near the University of Illinois. He went on to become a college president at Bethany College. He then moved to Washington, D.C., where he did relational work with all that D.C. entails among congressional leaders and business leaders and so forth, and built relationships. And I've first met Dick Foth 27 years ago when I was a student at Westmont College, and then ended up my family's had a family tradition of going to family camp at Mount Hermon here in California, and Dick would be the speaker. And so I've been watching him. I told him before we came on here, I feel like I know him like a really close friend, and he doesn't know me from Adam. But that's just the way it is. Dick's newest book is called Known: Finding Deep Friendships in a Shallow World. One of the things you say consistently in your messages is, you have to deal with two things in life: money and relationships, and one of them will make you rich.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I think we live in a culture and a time, especially in our country, of accumulation and all kinds of things. I had a friend in DC years ago said, "I'm not rich, but I accumulate friends." And I think that this idea that relationship, whether it's our historic family relationships or others, is just it's an ongoing thing, never ends, has great possibilities, and how you build those, especially today when we have generationally have huge challenges with how do we do that, because we haven't seen them work or whatever. That really means a ton. And you can be the wealthiest person in the world but not get in to see somebody. But the word that gets you into any office anywhere in the world, virtually at any time, is the word friend. And so that's how I sort of ended up there, I think.
How would you characterize what kind of makes for real friendship?
You know, I was given a gift 50 years ago last March. The first trip that Ruth and I ever took overseas was to Sorrento, Italy. If you're going to go on a first trip, go to Sorrento, Italy, right? And there was a conference called Adventure of Living, back then sponsored by a group called Word Books and Faith at Work, which was a renewal movement. And in that framework, I was part of a small group that week. Ruth and I were, and I had never been in a small group. Now everybody's in small groups. We collaborate in kindergarten, right? And there was a fellow there by the name of Lyman Coleman, who was sort of a small group guru back in the 70s. And he had a template that was a baseball diamond. And I call it relational baseball. And first base in building a strong relationship is history, story. And you just said, Dick, I know your story. You don't know mine, but I feel really close to you. Well, the reason that we feel closer, at least you feel closer, I'm feeling closer every second here, Dean, is that when you tell me your story, that's who you are. And if I were to draw that baseball diamond to scale, first base, which is history giving or story, would extend all the way to the pitcher's mound because that's the really big building block. We're sitting here on this day in early summer, or, and I'm just all I have to bring is my story. And if you don't want to know about that, then it's very hard for us to be friends. Because when I tell you my story, friendship has a chance. If we don't share stories, friendship doesn't have any chance at all. So history giving, the second base is affirmation, and we can get into that if we wanted later. Third base is covenant, home plate is dreaming. But that history giving piece is the place I always start when I talk about building relationships or having.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about the baseball diamond, and
Oh, okay.
let's move to affirmation. So
Okay.
you I've heard you talk about, the way that Jesus affirmed Peter. I mean, or just literally the
Right.
naming in
Yeah.
that case.
Yeah.
But talk about the power and the power of affirmation.
Sure. Affirmation is a $4 word to me. That means I like you. And when you start telling me your story, and it's like peeling an onion, so it takes a lifetime sometimes, I start knowing where to love you and I start knowing where to affirm you. In a relationship, nobody, you know, I don't build a relationship so you can tell me what I'm not, although sometimes you might need to. I desperately need to have somebody tell me who I am, or affirm who I think I am, or what I might dream of being, that sort of thing. And so there are sort of four levels of affirmation that I think of. The first one is prayer. The highest affirmation you could give somebody is if Dean says to me, Dick, I'm going to be praying for you. When you say that to me, it doesn't set my value. What that does is to acknowledge my value. And there's something in every human being, I think, that gets that. In DC, I say this, we were in DC 15 years, met with all kinds of people. Some people who were in the least advantaged places in the city, some people, Capitol Hill, Pentagon, whatever. And at the end of time together, we would just say, so Senator, or Congressman, or John, or whatever, are there are people out there who pray for people in authority in this nation. They think it works, and they're praying for you, whether you know it or not. So, is there anything you'd like us to pray for? Never in 15 years talking to whatever background, whatever faith or no faith, never had anybody say no.
Hmm.
And I don't know if just some folks are hedging their bets or what it is, but there's something so inherent in me that thinks somebody cares enough that if they think there's a God and they're going to talk that God, then I'm in. Let's get all the horses in the ring.
Right.
So words to God about you. The second thing is words to you about you. And we know this in education. You take a first grade class, split them down the middle, and say to one group, you really need to work harder on your art, stay between the lines or whatever. And so that's not really an affirmation. Within a week, oftentimes, this side will be stumbling badly, and this side that's being praised will go on. So, folks watching or listening, a lot of us can remember something that was said to us when we were 6 years old that wasn't affirming. And it's a lens through which we come to see the world a lot of times. So I think it takes a lot more affirmation to sort of overcome some negative things that have been articulated over the years. So that's words to God, words to you. The next thing is actions toward you. You know, if you said to me, Dick, I'd like you to come to my house. I'll take you back to my childhood home over on the coast of California, and we'll go out on the wharf there and have some whatever. That's an action toward me. If you said to me, I'd like to just do some things with you. Let's go someplace you go, and I'll just hang with you. But that's an action toward my world.
Hmm.
And those four things, I think, play into affirmation. And I can talk like this for another hour, but I need to take a deep breath. And you probably want to say, really, tell me about that. I don't know about
I'm going to make sure people get this because I've been learning about this for 27 years. First base, history giving. If you want to know me, it has to start with story. And and that's kind of where love begins, knowing who
Everything.
I am.
Everything.
So first base, history giving; second base, affirmation, which we just talked about, words to God about you, words to you about you, actions towards you, actions towards your world. Talk about covenant.
Covenant is what happens when we start becoming friends. We'll say, well, let's do something. How about meeting at Starbucks? Or here where I am in Colorado now, there's a peak here called Horsetooth Peak. We say, well, let's go hike Horsetooth. Or we might take a trip together, or we go fishing, or we do whatever the thing is. Those are covenantal ideas. There are big covenants that some of our audience has done, whether it's standing at an altar and giving faith to that person you're marrying, or standing in front of an officer saying, as an 18-year-old perhaps, I pledge, I covenant to defend the Constitution of the United States, and there are other kinds of covenants like that around the world. So that kind of covenant takes time. I once said in a conference, what we need is quality time. And Ruth, who was there, who who doesn't run off at the mouth like I do. She actually thinks before she speaks. She said, forget the quality. Give me quantity. We'll work out the quality later. So time, tenacity,
Mm.
idea of never saying quit. In a day when loyalties or commitments, whether it's personal or institutional, oftentimes uh, don't hold much water, as we say. That idea of sticking with the stuff
Mm.
through the hard places is a huge piece. And the third piece of that is truth telling. And truth telling comes in a variety of forms. And there was a wonderful book years ago by a fellow named Augsburger called Caring Enough to Confront. In that they talk about conflict. But along the way, the idea of telling the truth in a relationship, that is, um, what I think or what I feel or what I know, sort of discovered this template. And I confess I haven't always done this way. I still work at doing this way. If there's in any relationship or in any challenging situation to be able to say something affirming. So, Dean, I know you love God. I know you are one of those Jesus followers people. I know that you have this heart. So that's what I know. What I think is, in this moment or whatever the situation is, tremendous stressors, tremendous stressors. But what I feel is that when you're under stress, I get sort of the backwash of that, and I didn't do anything. I just get that, and forgive me for using you as the example, Dean. You're just sitting
There
there.
might be more truth to this than you're
You're,
getting at.
you're,
Yeah.
you're a prime target. So, and anyway, that trilogy of this is what I know, which is an affirming piece. This is what I think. That's usually about circumstances, and this is what I feel. This is how it's affecting me.
Mm.
It takes more work than just saying, just go get in the car, or I'm leaving, or whatever it is. So,
Right. So third base covenant: time, truth, time, tenacity, and truth telling. So on tenacity, so we were actually we were at family camp at Mount Hermon last week.
oh,
People asked me how it went. I said, well, we were all in one room for 6 days.
oh boy.
So there's positives and negatives. But the evening speaker was somebody you might know, Barry Corey.
Oh, come on. Love Barry
And
Corey.
President of Biola, who I knew is a friend of Dick. And so Barry taught every night on Ruth.
Oh boy.
Speaking of Ruth,
Yes.
and when you talk about tenacity, when you talk about this idea, and I've been thinking about my wife of
Yeah.
25 years, and we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And I as he was teaching about Ruth, and as he was teaching, I never, the book of Ruth came alive, and Barry Corey, just like you, has a way of communicating that and powerfully. But this idea, Dick, of where you go, I'll go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God, and even death, like
And where you
it,
die, I'll die.
where you die, I'll die.
Yeah.
And this is a widow.
Yeah.
This is the story. It just came to life, and I was thinking, my goodness, in marriage, in friendship,
Yeah.
could there be anything more powerful? That tenacity you talk about, related to covenant, related to third base, of telling another person. In fact, I got to stop talking here soon, but
Uh,
I remember, Nick, being in Washington D.C., and I remember hearing these stories about Doug Coe and Roy Cook, and Roy Cook coming alongside Doug Coe. And it struck me when I was hearing Barry Corey talk about it. I was thinking, and Roy Cook, when I was in a house at the Student Leadership Forum one time,
uh,
and Roy Cook was there. And Roy Cook, I remember he grabbed me by the collar kind of, and he said, just want to remind you, Dean, you already have your vocation in life. We were all thinking about what we're going to do,
yeah.
and he grabbed me and he said, "You've already got your vocation." That's my memory of Roy Cook. But the point is, the way Roy, I think, from what I've heard, the relationship that he cultivated with this younger man named Doug Coe, and the power of that friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen this probably 100 times. I've only seen it a couple or heard about it, but that Ruthian idea,
Mm-hmm.
where how powerful is that?
You know, yeah, I think this idea that, and maybe all of us have it at some point, is that I want to know that I'm loved, but if things go sideways, or if things go down or get screwy, probably you'll leave, or probably, and given there are some circumstances that just, they can't stay together for a whole range of reasons. But this idea of being pursued, I once had a fellow came to me because I was in a situation where I wanted to run. Well, it was a college presidency, and we were into it, and you're trying to raise millions of dollars, and you got lots of stressors and lots of audiences, lots of special interests, and I just wanted to run. And he said something to me like, "Well, you can go wherever you want, but I'm on you like ugly on an ape." Now, I didn't know about that whole metaphor, but, but he said, I'll hunt you down. It's almost that you can run but you can't hide line, that tension. And there's something about that that is so profound. And Bart, of course, he not just touches on it, he speaks into that a lot. But I've known Barry Corey, if I can just use I've
Yeah.
known Barry Corey since he was 20 years old,
Oh.
and he was going to be student body president at a college like Westmont the next year. And his father was the church leader of a large group of churches, and he said to me, as a young, I was at that time, I was probably 40, and he said, if you ever come to the East Coast, because they were Bostonians, if you ever come to the East Coast, just call us, we'll have lunch. We called them, we went for lunch and stayed 4 days, and it was Fourth of July, and they took us down to the Hatch Bandshell on the Charles River, and John Williams, the Schindler's List Star Trek guy or whatever, Star Wars guy, they're playing "I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy," and it's a moment that our children, who are now all adults, all in their almost in their 50s, they never forget that moment. And it was because of the kindness and tenacity of his father. He would say this, just walking with him. And of course, he has a wonderful book on that whole subject of kindness. But I've seen every time Barry calls, he just he just touches my life. Not just because he's smart or insightful, but there's a quality there of, if you have him as a friend, you know, he's with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm jealous that you heard. That's what I'm.
Well, if we couldn't have you, yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to hear him teach. And that's the way God is. I was thinking about it last night. God doesn't abandon us when we make mistakes,
Mm, mm,
you know, and to have a friend like that is just like a window into heaven. Dreaming we're at home base now.
Yeah,
Dreaming. We talk about dreaming.
yeah. We we hear a lot about dreaming these days. You have big dreams, and I'm all for that. The thing that touches me about dreaming, and this comes back to friendship, is that, and also in certain settings, you hear a lot about accountability groups. You need to be in a group with guys or with women, accountability groups, make sure that everything's going all right. But I think what happens with dreaming and friendship is that friends hold you accountable for your dreams. And sometimes you can say, I got this idea about whatever I'm going to do. And if you're just saying it to old Joe Schimmelfinnig over here, he says, really, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But if you have a friend and you say that, they'll say, I got to admit, that sounds a little dumb, but I'm with you in that. Let's go for that. Let's pray for that. And that holding accountable for dreams is something that's a huge gift in a relationship. Even if the dream is a sketch, you don't have any particulars. You just say, someday I think maybe I would. And what happens is then when you get together, they'll say to you, so how's the family or how's your work or whatever, and then they'll say, so how's the dream coming? And you may not want to talk about the dream. You may say, well, I've moved an inch in 12 years, but there's something about that. And I see Jesus in that. I see Jesus looking at Peter and saying, Peter, you don't, this is Foth paraphrase, you don't even know the dreams you could have, but I'm going to walk with you in those, and I'm going to hold you accountable in the very best possible way for those dreams. And the scriptures are full of those kinds of anecdotes. So that template, that baseball thing, has been a huge impact for me. So that when I start with story, I used to say, where were you born and raised? When I start with story. And I met a guy who, again, Bart knows this fellow, who was a former captain of the Coldstream Guards, those guys that guard the Queen, very British. And I said, Anthony, where were you born and raised? He said, I was not raised. Pigs are raised. I was brought up. So ever since then, I've been saying, where were you born and brought up? But that's my go-to question for first base. And the go-to question for dreaming is there anything I can do for you?
Mm.
Those two questions, often when I speak to college students, I'll say, if you take those two questions seriously in your life, there's something about that is just profound. How can I know you and how can I serve you? Anyway, I'm again, I'm
That's
talking.
so beautiful. So, history, affirmation, covenant, and dreaming. I think that's such a powerful way to look at relationship. Can you talk about you speak all over the country, and I've heard a lot, and consistently you talk about your father-in-law, who is a man named Roy Blakely.
Yes,
Will you talk just for a couple of minutes about his impact on your life?
yeah. Somebody asked me the other day who are two or three of the people that shaped you. I met Roy Blakely when I was 10 years old at a camp, like a kids camp at Mount Hermon. And happened to be on the campus of what became Bethany College, so just a few miles from Mount Hermon. And my family had been missionaries in India for a few years, and this was the first kids camp I'd ever gone to. And here was this guy who was 30 years older than I am. But he was a pastor, he took 3 weeks out of his summer to go do kids camp because he loved kids. And he was a ventriloquist and he had a dummy and he dressed up like an army guy and there's too much to go into. But the thing that stood out to me about him is that he talked to us like we were real. He talked to us like we were adults. And he taught us, he told stories from scripture, but he told other stories that had ethical components to them. And he taught us the books of the Bible to a song. Come, let us Christians try to tell the books of the Bible, so well. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, first, that song. And we'd have competition between the boys and the girls because they weren't sitting together, of course. Those are yucky people over there. And the girls won. They could say that in 28 seconds. It was unbelievable. And one night, the dummy talked to me. Said, "Hi, Dick. How you doing?" said, I'm good. I'm sitting in the front row. The next day, Roy finds me in the cafeteria line, says, Dick, it really good. Thanks for sitting in the front row. And I said, well, I like Jimmy. That was the dummy's name. He said, well, Jimmy likes you. And he, he said, Dick, always follow Jesus and you'll have a life that's full, that's rich. And I'm 10 years old. I'm scuffing my toe. And it's okay. And then 8 years later, I walk onto that college campus and meet this tall, sandy-haired, green-eyed girl by the name of Ruth, who turns out to be Roy's eldest daughter. I didn't know he had any kids. I thought he just had Jimmy. And so, but later, when I was thinking about marriage, I was frightened about that because my parents' relationship was coming apart. I thought, maybe it's genetic or whatever. All the questions one has, because a lot of folks listening have gone through this. And I went to see him, and he just affirmed me in a profound way in one sentence, sitting in a pickup truck on Kernan Road in North Modesto, California, in a school parking lot. And sometimes somebody can say a sentence, and it just changes how you see yourself. So he walked into my life at my age, really into my life when I was 21, and that's when my dad had sort of walked away. And he just was such an affirming person, such a person. He loved children, he loved kids, he was a wannabe farmer, not a very good one, all that stuff. So.
Wow. So beautiful. We only have a couple minutes left, but I want to close with this. So you're 28 years old, you're a church planting pastor. You stuttered.
Yeah.
That you talk about how God has healed your mouth, but you tell me the story briefly about how the 28-year-old church planting stuttering young pastor ends up in a living room with a Pulitzer Prize winning author.
I think it was the spring of 1970, which is a time not unlike this time of great upheaval. Young people ask all the time, ever gone through anything like this, COVID and the politics? Well, how about 68 to 71? That we thought it was the end of the world almost. I mean, it was just this huge upheaval. Sitting in my office and the phone rings, I pick it up. It's back in the day when you had cords on your phones and all that. Pick it up, and it's this kid from a fraternity, raunchiest fraternity, University of Illinois. And some fellows had come through. He had come to faith, and he said, "Understand you work with college kids. Can you come over and meet with our fraternity guys?" And so we did that. 8 months later, I get a call, same phone, same office, and it's this older man. He said, "Understand I'll call him John. My son John from such and such a fraternity." I said, "Yeah." He said, "His life has radically changed, Mr. Foth." I said, "Yes." He said, "He says it's God, Mr. Foth." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you say?" He said, "I say it's God." And he said, "I want to talk to you." He had this, I'm going, oh man. And then he said, "Why don't you come to my house for dinner?" Well, even if you're scared, if you put food in there, then you'll come your fear and go. So I go to his house for dinner, have this wonderful dinner, and it's John and his mom and this man. And I'm a stuttering guy. I have stuttered since I was 5 and up through my late 20s. And what I haven't told the audience is that here was this fellow who's a full professor of journalism at the University of Illinois, who is a political cartoonist for the Boston Globe. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he's a Harvard fellow. That means he's real smart. And it's like God said, why don't we got this sense of humor? Why don't we take the stutterer, put him in the Pulitzer Prize winning author's home, and let's see how that goes. So we sit down, and the man turns to me and said, "My boy's life has changed. I want you to tell me about that God." And I'm on the spot, and I just said, "Well, he's the I am, the most secure name in the universe. I am the God. I am your healer. I am your provider. I am all these I ams, right? I am the way. I'm the truth. I'm the life. I'm the beginning. I'm the end. I'm living water." And I just sort of blurted that out. And then for whatever reason, I just looked at him and said, "Would you like to know him?" And he said, "I would." And it caught me off guard. And he said, "How do I do that?" I said, "Well, you can just talk to him." And so he was a little hesitant. I said, "Would you like me to help you?" Ridiculous. "Would you like me to help you?" And he said, "I would." I just said, "Why don't you just follow me out loud?" because he's listening. I believe he's listening. And I just said, "Dear God, this is Fred. Dear God, this is Fred. You know me like the back of your hand. You know me like the back of your hand. You know the anger I've had at my son's generation, so forth." So it just went on just for a couple of minutes, and then I said, "Come into my heart and make me a new man. In Jesus' name, amen." And I look up, and he's not looking at me. Tears are streaming down his face, and he's looking at his boy. And he gets up and he starts across the room, and he meets his boy right in front of me. And they throw their arms around each other in an embrace, and they're weeping. And I'm sitting there watching. And pretty soon he pushes his boy away, just at arm's length. And he looked at me and said, "Dick, do you know what's happening here tonight?" And I said, "I think I do, Fred, but why don't you tell me?" And then the Pulitzer Prize winner came out. He said, "I believe that 2,000 years ago, God gave his son to me. But tonight, my son gave me God." Then I start bawling. I get up, and
Oh,
I mean, it's a moment in my life, and I think I'm remembering it as accurately as I can. That I just look at that and I say, nobody could just put that together.
no,
I mean,
no,
Hollywood could not do better than that.
no. Oh, so good. Dick Foth is my guest. The book is Known, Finding Deep Friendships in a Shallow World. You can go to known.fm and find all of his stuff. And you can find the podcast, which is awesome. It's like these 15-minute little segments that are just powerful. And Dick, thanks for your impact on my life and the lives of countless others. I think there's a lot of people like me that you don't even know that are out there. So thanks for everything that the ministry that you've had over decades.
I'm so honored to be with you, Dean. I've watched some of the things that you've done. I love what you're doing, and keep doing that. And thank you for letting me be just a small part of this along the way. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, sir. And we appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time.